It is said, be mindful of your self-talk. It's a conversation with the universe. In this talk, I will tell you about different types of self-talk and teach you how to talk to yourself. It's not a mad thing, believe me. So, everybody talks to themselves, right? Some in the mind, some loudly. I soliloquize, meaning that I talk to myself loudly. Kind of spooky, isn't it? It's a frequent process with me, and I'm sure that's the case with many of you as well. I find myself doing this constantly, and people come up to me and say it's weird. I tell them that I talk to myself because I need a professional opinion. In all seriousness, it's normal to talk to yourself to a certain extent because it's your inner voice that you're bringing out. Self-explaining can give voice to impulses of curiosity that may otherwise remain unexplored. Now, did you know that Einstein used to talk to himself? But hey, I'm not Einstein. I'm not full of intelligence. But doing so, listen, did make him self-reliant. People who talk to themselves are highly proficient and count on only themselves for what they need. And there are three types of self-talk: motivational self-talk, instructional self-talk, and evaluative self-talk. In motivational self-talk, there are goal-oriented self-talks, which are many a times done by athletes. In one of the surveys, athletes were asked how they cope up with the stress of competition and training. Now, surprisingly enough, athletes were seen to practice self-talk in a variety of situations, like training, before, during, and after a competition. And furthermore, they also employed self-talks to get them out of dire situations and injuries. Research has shown that motivational self-talk can help us boost productivity, confidence, and even help us overcome problems. Instructional self-talk happens when we need to guide ourselves through a specific task, such as learning a new skill. Now, this type of self-talk has proven itself the most significant when it comes to enhancing an individual's qualities and abilities. Now, evaluative self-talk. This type of self-talk is generally related to past events, but that's not always the case. It happens when we assess our actions and see what we could have done better or would do better in the future. Now, these self-talks divide into two parts: negative self-talk and positive self-talk. Now, negative self-talk is the inner dialogue you have with yourself that might be limiting your abilities or even preventing you to reach the next level, or as I like to call it, the no-no self-talk. In 2013, two individuals conducted an experiment, or rather say a study, in which they employed a bunch of patients diagnosed with the condition known as anorexia nervosa. It's a condition where people obsess over their weight and stop eating, but it's usually curable. And they also took a portion of people who were not diagnosed with such a condition. All of them were asked to go down a passageway that became increasingly narrower. Now, the patients with anorexia nervosa were given a negative self-talk before the activity. Now, when all of them started going down the passageway, the patients with the condition were started turning when the space between their shoulders and the walls of the passageway was 40%. And people who were not diagnosed with such a condition started turning when the space between their shoulders and the wall was 25%. This showed that the patients diagnosed with the condition were severely affected by the negative self-talk, and were seen, it made them think that they were larger than they actually were. Now, this makes us come to a conclusion that negative self-talk can disrupt our balance internally. So it's always best to not employ yourself to this self-talk at all. On the other hand, there's positive self-talk. In positive self-talk, this positive self-talk can help us get out of the most dire situations, and it can also help us to boost up our mood. So basically, this type of self-talk processes itself through motivational self-talk and builds up to instructional self-talk. Now that I've asked you, now that I've told you these types of self-talks, I would like to tell you how to do this positive self-talk. Now, this type of self-talk includes 3 steps. First, investigate. Why do these thoughts arise in your mind? What's the reason for them? Do they have the same origin? Are they forming a specific pattern? Second, learn. Learn to control the negativity of your self-talk. And instead of saying, I can't do this, say, this is a challenge I'm willing to take. And then lastly, think. To improve the quality of your self-talk, think, could I be overreacting? Is this really what it looks like? Am I guessing on information and making assumptions? Are my opinions dependent on other people's opinions? Now that I've asked you to ask yourself a million questions, and I'm hoping that you all get good answers so that you can practice this positive self-talk. Now I'd like you to tell you that positive self-talk can actually help people with anxiety and depression. The research has shown that positive self-talk helps people with anxiety and depression because negative self-talk is widely related to such conditions. That is why it is very important for us to apply positive self-talk in real life. Let's take an example. So one depression patient was asked to follow the 2-sentence rule, in which she was asked to repeat these 2 sentences every day. I like myself unconditionally, and I never destroy my image through destructive self-criticism. Now, after repeating these words for about 3 weeks, through the powers of these words alone, her improvement in the condition was phenomenal. Can you believe it? That's how much this self-talk can affect you. So with this, I'd like to teach you how to talk to yourself. As we have gathered, it is best to discourage negative self-talk. Say stop after a negative thought. You may not be able to control the first instinctive thought that comes to your mind, but you can control the second. Use energizing language. Talking to yourself in an upbeat manner can increase your motivation, and it can also help in decreasing distracting thoughts, especially when a task requires much effort, focus, and endurance. Talk to yourself like you're talking to another person. It is said, when people think of themselves as another person, it allows them to give themselves objective or helpful feedback. It might feel a bit odd at first, but it's easy to get into a habit of. Have a kind way of self-talk. Avoid talking bad about others as well as yourself. Try to talk to yourself like someone you love. Most importantly, listen to yourself. How do you sound to yourself? What common phrases do you use? Listen to your voice and examine it carefully. Self-listening, otherwise known as self-awareness, is a primary factor offering feedback for self-efficacy. Lastly, modify some phrases. I know I've said this a lot of times, but by bringing positivity, you can actually make your self-talk much more richer and brighter. Now, like instead of saying that there's no way it will work, try saying I can try to make it work. Or instead of saying that I failed, say that attempting to do this took courage, and I am proud of myself for trying. I want you all to think of self-talk as a helpful way that would help you to that would provide you the support to get through a moment. Now, self-talk is something that might be difficult for all of you to do because it seems a bit strange and unusual at first. But I want you to take it slow, and I want you to think about what you heard here today. I want you to know that you always know your answer. Whatever problem you're facing, you have the answer embedded in your subconscious, in fact. And self-talk is a way to communicate with your subconscious. And when you're successful in doing so, you can have solutions to any problem you have. So whenever you get demotivated or think that this is not going to work, I can't do this, think that you can. apply a simple technique such as self talk to help you get through it. I want you to know that your first approach should always be yourself. Remember, we can always be the friend we need.